A very good morning to all the students. I hope you all are doing well. So let's continue with the topic of our chapter number 3, that is metals and non-metals. And today we're going to do the topic called as chemical properties of non-metal. Although this topic is not given in your NCERT book, but it has been seen that sometimes the questions are being asked from this topic as well. It is a very small topic and we will be just discussing with few points. That will be a short one, an easy one. So we'll start with this today. So chemical properties of non-metal. First we're gonna study the reaction of non-metals with oxygen. Now oxygen is also a non-metal. So how come a non-metal react with a non-metal? So that we're gonna study here. In case carbon, which is C, reacts with oxygen, so we get CO2, and CO2 here is a non-metallic oxide. Alright, so this non-metallic oxide means whenever we mix non-metallic oxides with water, they will behave as acids, and acids we know that they turn blue litmus into red. Whenever we react any metal with the oxygen, it produces metallic oxides. Like when we burn magnesium in the presence of oxygen, then it gives magnesium oxides, and it is a basic oxide. But the non-metallic oxides are called as acidic oxide. Now we will be doing some few more example with this. Like sulfur is also a non-metal. So sulfur will react with a non-metal called as oxygen, and it will give us SO2. Now this SO2 is again a non-metallic oxide, or if we call it acidic oxide, because if we will dissolve it with water, we will be getting an acid, and it will test our blue litmus to red. So this CO2, now it does not happen that every time the non-metallic oxides are always acidic. They can be neutral sometime. That also we're gonna see here. So if this CO2 which was made here, we gonna check it with water like H2O, like CO2 is mixed with water, then we will get carbonic acid. So this carbonic acid is not a very strong acid, but it's a weak acid. So when we mix CO2 with water, we get carbonic acid. So same this SO2, when we react it with water, SO2 plus H2O, then we will get H2SO3, that is called as sulfurous acid. Okay, so this sulfuric acid is also acidic in nature. We can see this by doing a simple experiment. Like if we take any jar, a glass jar, and inside it we keep a spatula, this round kind of a thing, and here on top of it we keep some sulfur, and we have to close the lid. Okay, then we have to burn the sulfur. After the sulfur starts burning, we will see some fumes in this, and then we'll slowly move this lid out, or the spoon out. Then in this jar there will be some gas. This gas will be of SO2 gas. Okay, SO2 gas. Either if we'll add water into this gas and we'll shake it, or if we just don't add any water and we just bring a wet litmus paper, blue litmus paper in the jar, we'll see that that blue litmus jar will be turned into red color. That means the acids converts the blue litmus into red. That means the SO2, when it reacts with water, it makes acid, which is called as sulfurous acid. So whenever the non-metals react with oxygen, they produces non-metallic oxides. One more example with you I'm going to share is that when carbon reacts with oxygen, so it gives CO2, but sometimes when there is not complete oxygen or not complete combustion is there, so it gives just CO, that is carbon monoxide. Okay, so this is a neutral oxide, neither acidic nor basic. Okay, one more here. If we react hydrogen with oxygen, so we get water, and water is a neutral oxide. It's neither acidic nor basic. So whenever the nonmetals react with oxygen, they produces acidic or basic oxides. Now next is reaction with water. So nonmetals do not react with water because they do not release any electron in the water. So because nonmetals want electrons and water don't release any electrons, so they don't react with water. So that is why they react with metals, because metals give them electrons. After this, next is reactions with salt solution. Whenever the nonmetal react with the salt solution, like this NaBr, that is sodium bromide, when it reacts with chlorine. So now here this salt solution is of sodium bromide and it's chlorine. So if it will react with this chlorine, what will happen? It will interchange the element that is the more reactive nonmetal will displace the less reactive nonmetal from its salt solution. So here this chlorine is more reactive than this bromine. So this chlorine will replace this bromine and will fix in here. So it is a kind of a displacement reaction, but both the things are nonmetals. So we have seen this displacement reaction with the metals, but here it's a non-metallic compound, like it's a salt. So salts are always made when a metal reacts with a non-metal. So bromine is the non-metal, so it's sodium bromide, and this chlorine will displace the weaker non-metal from its salt solution and it will form NaCl and Br. So this is how it reacts. So non-metals react with salt solution the same way the metals react. So it will be a displacement reaction, and the more reactive nonmetal will displace the less reactive nonmetal. Now next is reaction with chlorine. So whenever any nonmetal reacts with chlorine, it forms a chloride. Okay, so it will combine with hydrogen and it will form a chloride. It will be hydrogen chloride. Or now next is the nonmetal react with hydrogen. So here it's H2S. I have written here but it's not clear. H2 plus sulfur. So any nonmetal reacts with hydrogen will again form the hydrogen sulfide, like H2S. So these are the basic reactions which sometimes comes in exam. Not very sure, but you have to learn this, that reactions of nonmetals with oxygen. So reactions of nonmetals with oxygen leads to formation of non-metallic oxides or sometimes neutral oxides. So in the case of non-metallic oxides, they will be acidic in nature and they will turn blue litmus red. Okay, now with this we have done. So we're gonna start our next topic, that is the ionic properties, which we were doing the previous day. So here we have already done about the formation of these ionic bonds, how that the bond reacts. I hope you are clear with this topic. So today we're gonna do this topic, which is called as property of ionic compounds. So here are some properties of ionic compound. First, we're going to start with the activity. We have an activity that is 3.13. So in this, we have to take some samples of sodium chloride, potassium iodide, and barium chloride. Now all these are salts, and we know that salts are made when metals reacts with non-metals, and when metals reacts with non-metals, they form the ionic bonding. Now sodium, for example, is a metal and chlorine is a non-metal. So sodium has one electron extra, and to complete its octet structure, sodium tries to give or donate its electron, and there is chlorine which has one electron less. So chlorine also wants to complete its octet structure, so chlorine accepts the electron. Now the sodium transfer one electron to chlorine, and thus they form an ionic bond. So the compounds formed by the ionic bonds are called as ionic compounds, and all these salts are ionic compounds. So we're going to take sodium chloride, potassium iodide, barium chloride, or any other salt which is available in the science laboratory. Now after taking any other salt, we will do a physical state test. Like we will check what is the physical states of this salt. Now in the physical state, we will see that all these salts are crystalline solid, That means they are not liquid, they are not viscous, but they will be in a crystal solid form. Now these salts are in a crystal solid form because the ionic compounds in them there are oppositely charged ions which attract each another very strongly, because in the other side it is sodium ion which is positive ion, and in the other side it's chlorine which is a negative ion. So these oppositely charged ions will attract each other with a strong force which makes that compound in a form of crystal structure. That is how it is very hard and brittle. So they will be in a solid crystalline state. Then take a small amount of a sample on a metal spatula and heat directly on the flame. Now we will take that salt and we will keep it in a spatula and then we will heat it on the flame. What we'll see, they will not melt, they will not boil, they will not fumigate, they will be stay like that itself. Now we conclude that they are having a very high melting and boiling point. Melting point may be above than 800 degrees C, and boiling point may be of 1400 and or more degrees C. Now these ionic compounds are made up of positive and negative charges, again ions, and there is a strong force of attraction between the oppositely charged ion, again the same point. So a lot of heat energy is required to break this force of attraction and melt or boil the ionic compounds. Now because of this, the ionic compounds have high melting and boiling points. So any substance having a high melting and boiling point, that will be called as an ionic compound or ionic bond, because it's very hard to break. And it's hard to break because they have a strong force of attraction because of the oppositely charged ions. So after this we will observe, did the sample impart any color to the flame? Do this compound melt? No, they won't impart any color to the flame and they will not melt because they have a very high melting and boiling point. Now next is try to dissolve the sample in water. Petrol, kerosene oil are the soluble. So these salts, when we will dissolve them in water, they will be soluble in water, but they will be insoluble in kerosene oil or any other liquid such as petrol or alcohol or benzene, chlorine, many other compounds, but they will be soluble in water. Now sodium chloride is soluble in water, but that is insoluble in the organic solvents like benzene or kerosene oil or petrol. So copper sulfate also is an ionic compound and it is soluble in water. We can easily make a blue color solution. So these ionic compounds dissolve in water because again water has a high dielectric constant, and due to which it weakens the attraction between the ions, whereas all the other solutions of this alcohol and kerosene oil are not able to break the force of attraction because water has a dielectric constant, so it is able to break that bond. So dielectric constant will be a simple thing like a solvent polarity or a ability of any compound to stabilize the charges. So water has this high dielectric constant, so it is able to break the bond between these ionic compounds. So these are soluble in water, but they are not soluble in petrol or kerosene oil or any other liquid like that. So next is you have to make a circuit to in figure number this 8.3.8, and then what we'll observe now when we will make this arrangement, here we can see that we are testing the conductivity of salt solution. We have dissolved the salt solution in water, and then we are having two graphite rods and a bulb and a battery. That means we're going to complete the circuit and we will test it whether the bulb glows or not. So we will see that the bulb will glow because the ionic compound conducts the electricity. So when they are dissolved in water, if we'll keep sodium chloride powder here in the beaker and then we will do the whole setup, it won't conduct the electricity because that is not in molten state. So if it is dissolved in water, it become a conductor. So even if we melt the salt, like if we make it to the higher melting point, like we rise the temperature to 1400 degrees C and more than that, then the salt will melt and again it will conduct the electricity. So but here we just will just dissolve the salt in water and we'll check about the conductivity. So we're gonna see that the ionic compounds conducts electricity as they contain the charged particles called ion. So these charged particles are responsible to flow the electrons through them. Although the solid compounds are made up of ions, but they do not conduct the electricity in solid state, because although they are made up of ions, but they don't allow the electricity to pass through them. Now, because in the solid form, the ions are held together in a fixed position by a strong electrostatic force and they cannot move freely. So, in solid ionic compounds state, they don't conduct the electricity. But when we dissolve the ionic compounds in the water or when we melt them, the crystallic structure is broken and the ions become free to move and conduct the electricity. Because of that, the aqueous solution or an ionic compound conducts the electricity because it has free ions so that they can move freely and they can conduct the electricity. In the liquid form, there are plenty of free ions in the solution, so it's called a good conductor. That is why whenever we try to make an electrolyte, we either add salt or acid to it. Okay, now all these things are all written here in the book itself. All the points which I've explained you are here also. So here's a table in which we have been given the melting and boiling point, so we can see the difference. Like NaCl is having so high melting point, it's 1074 Kelvin, and the boiling point is also very high, and also all of them are having a very high melting and boiling point because all of them are the ionic compounds. So we are done with the chapter. I hope you are wondering that why I'm leaving these topics like occurrence of metals, extraction of metals, because all these topics has been cut from your CBSE syllabus for your this session 2021 and 20. So all this extraction and metallurgy has been cut from your syllabus, so you don't have to study about these topics. Corrosion is also cut. We will give you full syllabus, so you don't have to read this, you don't have to study this, so you just have to do till your this ionic properties of ionic compounds. So it makes this very important because all the important topics have been cut from your syllabus for this year, so because of the pandemic. So you have to just study about till here from your textbook page chapter number 3. So at the last we will be doing question and answers, which I will be giving you as an AP homework. So you will have to check the questions which we have, the topics which we haven't done. So just skip those questions. I have already marked some questions here, like, so if you find some questions which we haven't done or studied, so you can also skip those questions. But if you do simple questions like rusting, you only know about these things, so I think you can solve the questions. So this is done for today's video, and please go through your book. I hope it's an easy topic today which I've taken. So try to find the question and answers and do your work and study hard. Thank you.